Welcome to my channel. When 3 F-16s failed and hope was lost, one outcast pilot climbed into her battered A-10 Warthog. They called her Dust Fox, a joke whispered in the hangar. But over Falcon Ridge, she turned mockery into fire. Outnumbered, outgunned, and bleeding fuel, she fought tanks, jets, and death itself to bring her brothers home. The desert was alive with fire and steel. Even before the mission launched, I could feel it. The sky above Falcon Ridge Air Base churned with heat and tension, as though the sun itself was watching, waiting. Beneath that sky, I sat in the cockpit of my A-10 Thunderstrike, watching the shimmer of the horizon blur the line between land and fire. My bird wasn't sleek or fast. It didn't turn heads. It roared instead. Heavy, armored, unfashionable. Just like me. Most of the pilots in the 214th Wing thought I belonged in the logistics shack, or maybe ferrying parts across safer skies. They didn't say it outright, but their glances made it clear. You don't trust the girl they called Dust Fox to lead a combat sortie, especially not when the targets are dug in and angry. But they didn't know the terrain like I did. My real name's Talia Greaves. I was born in a dust-choked farming town most maps forgot. My father worked on crop dusters, and I'd logged flight hours before I learned to parallel park. But I wasn't some folksy tale of talent. I trained for this, bled for it, and I knew exactly what the A-10 could do in the hands of someone with nothing to lose. That morning, I watched 3 F-16s limp back to base, riddled and smoking from a failed strike. They were fast, but speed doesn't mean much when you're tangled in an ambush. That's when the ground crew called me up. The command center didn't ask me for a plan. They were too busy writing eulogies. Still, I stood up during the briefing, tracing flight routes in the sand map with my finger. I proposed a staggered attack vector to punch through the ridge line. It would minimize radar exposure and buy our infantry a window. I didn't expect applause, but I didn't expect them to laugh either. They laughed. I left the room without saying a word. I didn't need them to believe. I needed the air under my wings. By 0832, I was taxiing down the runway, the shark-toothed nose of my Warthog gleaming beneath the sun. My fingers moved across the pre-flight checks with the precision of ritual. Every bolt, every panel, every readout had to be perfect. The kind of precision you develop when you know no one's watching your six. I took off low and heavy, engines howling against the sky's judgment. Somewhere ahead, men were dying. Somewhere ahead, I'd prove that Dust Fox wasn't just a name they muttered behind my back. It was a warning. The sky opened up like a wound. Our unit, call sign Grizzly Flight, had 4 birds in the air, but I was the only one with an A-10. The rest were lighter, sleeker. They liked altitude. I liked crawling low, scraping the teeth of the earth with my wings. The infantry pinned in Lancer Valley didn't care what flew in. They just needed someone to cut the noose tightening around them. The first thing I saw was smoke, columns of it, curling upward from the broken remnants of armored transports. Radio chatter flickered, scattered with screams, short commands, and the numb quiet of soldiers trying to survive. Talon 3, we've got armor movement, North Quadrant. No air support. Say again, no air support. Then I keyed in. This is Dust Fox. I'm inbound. Mark smoke on targets. There was silence, then a clipped response, ragged and full of disbelief. Dust Fox. You're what, Solo? I could almost hear the resignation in his voice. One battered A-10? Not what they were hoping for. Not what they thought they needed. But the thing about the Warthog, it doesn't need approval to deliver hell. As I descended into the canyon mouth, I saw the enemy armor grinding forward. Soviet-era tanks, retrofitted with jammers and spiked with camo nets. They were using the terrain like pros. I counted 4 tanks, maybe more beneath the haze, plus infantry escorts. Too much for one jet. Maybe for a beauty queen and a fighter. But not for me. I dropped flares as I banked into my first run, hugging the canyon's edge. My HUD blinked red. Threat systems pinged. I ignored them all. Guns, 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 I called out. The GAU-8 lit up. It didn't fire, it roared. 40 rounds per second, each one a steel apology for doubt. I saw one tank's turret spiral into the air like a child's toy. Another erupted in flame as I laced it with a cluster of Mavericks. The radio came alive. Holy hell, Dust Fox is real. I climbed fast, then looped back, diving again into the kill zone. Below, the ridge echoed with chaos. My eyes flicked to the radar. Contacts. High speed. Not ours. Missiles tore through the air behind me. I rolled into a dive, smoke curling from my wings. My bird groaned, strained, but she held. The fight was just getting started. They came in pairs, sleek fighters, probably Su-35s or some knockoff made to look fast and mean. They sliced through the clouds like scalpels, locking onto my position before I had time to breathe. Grizzly flight, break formation. Defensive dive. I barked. Even though I already knew it, two of my wingmates were gone. I didn't see them fall, but I heard the screaming static over the comms. The silence that followed said everything. So it was me. Alone. Outnumbered. Low on fuel. Heavy. Perfect. I jettisoned the auxiliary tanks and dove straight toward the canyon floor, feeling the G-forces twist my spine. The Warthog screamed as I pulled her tight along the rock face. Missiles slammed into the ridge behind me, detonating in sheets of fire and stone. Still here. Dust Fox, you've got 2 on your 6. Coming in hard, came a voice over the emergency net. It was one of the ground units. You need to break off. Negative, I answered calm. They're following me. That's the mistake. I led them lower, into the winding folds of the desert terrain. A place where maneuverability beat speed. Where flying too fast meant you met the mountain with your teeth. I snapped left, weaving between columns of rock, so close I could see the shadow of my tailplane ripple across them. The Su-35s pursued, but they weren't built for this. Not for the dirt. Not for the chaos. I pulled up sharply beneath a natural arch and rolled inverted, flinging a stream of flares that bathed the canyon in firelight. One of the pursuers tried to match the move, tried. He clipped the arch, lost control, and vanished in a bloom of dust and wreckage. One left. He tried to climb out, break high, and swing wide to re-engage. I didn't give him the chance. I yanked hard, nose up, throttle slammed to full, and climbed behind him like a shadow rising. He didn't expect me to chase. Warthogs aren't supposed to be hunters. But I wasn't flying a Warthog anymore. I was one. Fox 3, I called out. A Sidewinder locked, launched, and found home. The jet exploded in a bloom of smoke and fury. Silence returned. But it wasn't peace. It was the kind that comes before the next war cry. My bird was bleeding fuel. My comms were scratchy. And down below, someone was still calling for help. I turned toward the voice. Time to finish what I started. I descended again toward the valley. The enemy armor hadn't vanished in the dogfight. They'd used it. Regrouped. Dug in deeper. I spotted them now through the haze. A half-dozen IFVs and troop carriers wedged into a narrow pass, bristling with mounted guns. The infantry below, our boys, were pinned behind shattered rock and smoke. If I didn't move fast, they wouldn't last another 10 minutes. Grizzly flight. Anyone still flying? I asked. Silence. Then, a broken voice. Grizzly 3 here. I'm hit. Bleeding altitude. No weapons left. Just trying not to crash. Copy, I said. Climb if you can. Head west. I'll take it from here. I swung wide, drawing a circle around the valley like a vulture watching the kill. Then I dropped flares and came in fast, hugging the terrain. The Warthog shook beneath me, but I knew her limits, and she knew mine. Marking targets, a ground voice gasped. A green smoke grenade popped against the canyon floor. That was all I needed. I toggled to my last batch of ordnance. 2 AGM-65s. Enough. Target acquired. I whispered, then squeezed. The first missile roared away, trailing heat and vengeance. It smashed into the lead carrier, igniting an explosion that lit up the canyon. Soldiers scattered like ants, some diving for cover, others scrambling to reposition. The second missile found its mark in a machine gun nest. Sand and blood sprayed into the air. I climbed and circled again, slower now, my bird protesting every movement. My radar blinked red. Low fuel, low ammo, high risk. But I wasn't leaving. I looked down at the field, the scorched wreckage, and the tiny, brave shadows still fighting for breath. Then I heard it. Dust Fox, is that really you? A voice cracked through the comms, trembling, maybe in pain, maybe in disbelief. Still here, I said, and not leaving without you. The comms lit up again, this time with cheers, choked laughter, a ragged, defiant sound. Enemies pulling back, someone shouted. I let myself smile. Just a flicker. But it wasn't over. Another blip on my radar. Fast mover, inbound. I turned my head skyward. A contrail streaked the heavens. Dust Fox. Came Grizzly 3, his voice fainter now. We've got one more. Coming in hot. I don't think I can stay airborne. My fingers tightened on the stick. One more. I repeated, calm as steel. Then we all go home. The bandit cut through the sky like a blade, sleek and silent, heading straight for the burning canyon. I could see him now, an advanced variant, likely stolen tech. Too fast for radar to track properly. Too agile for a straight-up dogfight. He wasn't coming to fight. He was coming to finish what the others couldn't. And I wasn't going to let him. Dust Fox, he's locking on me, Grizzly 3 wheezed. I'm too slow. I can't. Cut your altitude, I ordered. Drop to the deck and bank toward the sun. I won't make it. You will, I said. Because I'll be between you and him. I didn't wait for permission. I throttled forward, the Warthog rumbling under me like a beast stirred from a deep sleep. I climbed straight toward the path of the enemy jet, the radar tone screaming in my headset, growing higher with every second. Locked. I launched countermeasures, flares trailing like fireflies. He fired. The missile streaked past me, fooled by the decoys. I rolled over, inverted, and saw his nose coming straight at me. For a heartbeat, we stared at each other, him in his pristine fighter, and me in my battered bird, teeth painted on the nose like a dare. I pulled a hard vertical loop. He followed. He shouldn't have. At the top of the climb, I throttled back, let gravity drag me into a dive, and cut across his arc. The Warthog groaned like it might come apart, but I lined up the shot. Too close for missiles. This was personal. I squeezed the trigger. The GAU-8 thundered. Shells ripped through his fuselage, shredding control surfaces. He veered wildly, engine flaming. He tried to climb, but he didn't have enough lift left. I watched him spiral away, tumbling end over end into the canyon below. Impact. Gone. Silence followed, broken only by static, then a weak cheer. Dust Fox, that was insane, came Grizzly 3. Still airborne? I asked. Barely. But yeah. I turned, flying beside him as he limped through the smoke. His bird was a mess, tail damage, hydraulics failing. I didn't have much left either. My fuel was a whisper, my systems bleeding warnings. But we had made it. You lead, he said. You earned it. I looked ahead. The desert was endless, the base still far beyond the heat haze. But we were going home, 1 mile at a time. Every warning light on my panel glowed red. Fuel gauge? Laughable. Engine temp? Through the roof. Right side flaps. Gone, shredded clean off. My Warthog sounded like a dying animal, but she still flew. Grizzly 3 was trailing smoke like a comet. His left engine was shot, stabilizer barely hanging on. We were two ghosts in the sky, gliding on grit and stubbornness. Dust Fox, he called. I've got a fuel light. I don't think I can make it. You will, I answered. Stay tight on me. You always this bossy. Only when lives are on the line. We flew low, beneath radar, across an ocean of heat-baked sand. Every gust tugged at the wounded jets, but we held together. We were too slow to evade and too high to land. One mistake, and we'd slam into the earth. I watched his plane the way you watch a brother bleeding out, counting seconds, listening to each cough from his engine like a death rattle. Then I saw it. On my radar, faint but real. A signal. Iron Mesa Airfield. Home. Eyes up 3. We've got runway visual. I'm taking us in. Copy that. I'll try not to die on your wing. I smiled just a little. The comms flared alive with static, then a command voice. Unidentified aircraft, you're not cleared to land. Identify immediately. Dust Fox and Grizzly 3, returning from Lancer Valley strike. Emergency protocol. Fuel critical. Systems compromised. Requesting immediate priority approach. Silence. Then. Dust Fox, copy. You're cleared. Runway 12, approach vector 074. Emergency teams on standby. The base had heard of me. That much was clear. 3. I called. You go first. No way. You earned lead. You're burning worse than me. Don't argue. There was a long pause then. Yes, ma'am. I pulled back, let him stagger forward. His landing gear deployed shaky and slow. He hit the strip hard, sparks flying from a collapsed wheel, but he made it. Rolled to a steaming stop at the edge of the runway. Now it was my turn. The Warthog coughed, trembled, screamed, but held. I touched down fast, brakes hissing, metal screeching beneath me. We stopped. 2 broken birds. But alive. As the rescue crews raced out, I finally took off my helmet. And for the first time in a long while, I let myself breathe. The canopy hissed as it opened, releasing the last of the cockpit heat like breath from a tired beast. My boots hit the tarmac with a dull thud, and for a moment, no one moved. The rescue crews stared like they were seeing a ghost step out of twisted steel. I glanced down. My flight suit was torn, stained with oil, grit, and blood I hadn't even realized was mine. But I was standing. Grizzly 3 was already being pulled from his wreck, his hand clutching his helmet like a relic. When he saw me, he grinned through bloodied lips. "You fly like a devil," he said. "You land like a saint." "I'll take that as a compliment," I muttered. Then the whispers started. "Is that Dust Fox?" She came back from the valley. She flew solo through 5 bandits. The ground crew surrounded my bird. Mechanics approached the A-10 like archaeologists approaching a myth. The nose art, my war-painted fox, was scorched and chipped, but still bared its teeth. A young tech ran a hand over one of the cannon barrels. "This thing fired every round," he murmured. "Goddamn." Then the officers came. Senior brass in starched collars and guarded stairs. Colonel Herrick led the pack, flanked by 2 pilots I recognized from the morning briefing. The same ones who'd snickered when I suggested a new flight pattern. They weren't laughing now. Herrick stopped in front of me, eyes scanning my suit, my jet, the carnage we'd dragged home behind us. "I reviewed the mission logs," he said slowly. "You brought back 2 jets, saved over 30 men on the ground, eliminated 6 armored targets, confirmed kills on 5 enemy aircraft." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. He looked past me, then nodded once. "We'll debrief at 1900. In the meantime, you've earned some quiet." That was all. No medals. No applause. But when I walked back toward the hangar, the crew parted from me like a tide. One by one, they nodded. Some touched their helmets in silent salute. Not because of rank. Because of what they saw. Not Dust Fox, the call sign. Not the pilot. But the storm that came when others turned away. 1900 hours. Debriefing chamber, sector red. The lights were too bright, the air too cold. Every officer in that room had read the after-action report by then. They didn't need to ask how I pulled it off. They wanted to know why I didn't break. I sat across from Colonel Herrick, my posture straight despite the fire still crawling beneath my bruises. Around us, a semicircle of pilots and command staff tapped pens, shuffled papers, pretended they weren't staring. Herrick folded his hands. "Lieutenant Greaves," he began, "you disobeyed flight protocol, deviated from formation, and engaged enemy air assets without support." "Confirmed," I said. "No defense. Just truth." "You also executed one of the most effective close-air response missions in this wing's recorded history." He continued, his tone colder than his words. "I didn't fly for history," I said. "I flew because no one else was going to." A silence passed like thunder waiting to strike. Then someone, Captain Rollins, one of the smirking aces, cleared his throat. "You can't expect anyone to just be ready for that kind of pressure. You went off script. Reckless by the book." I turned to him slowly. "You want the book? I've read it. Every page. And the day a book saves men trapped in a canyon with missiles falling around them, you let me know. Until then, I'll fly by the only rule that matters. Don't come home alone." Rollins flushed, but said nothing. Across the table, Herrick tapped a folder. "Your actions prevented a full company from being overrun. But the damage to your aircraft exceeds authorized thresholds. Your jet is grounded until full inspection." "I'll help rebuild her," I said. "You're not a mechanic, Lieutenant." "No," I said, "but she is. And she brought us home." The colonel stared, then finally sighed. "We'll discuss reassignments later. For now, stand down. Rest. You've earned it." I rose without ceremony. Before I reached the door, a junior officer called out, hesitant. "Ma'am, is it true? You fought off 5 bandits solo." I paused. "No," I said. "I didn't fight them." He blinked. "But I outlasted them." By the next morning, my A-10 had become a monument. She sat in the corner of Hangar 4, scorched and pockmarked, a silent beast who'd bled for the men beneath her wings. The mechanics hadn't touched her. Not yet. Instead, they walked slow around her frame, whispering like it was sacred ground. I stepped into the hangar before sunrise, still sore, still tired, still full of fire. The tech crews didn't speak, but when I walked to the Warthog's side and rested a hand on her battered fuselage, they nodded. Like I belonged. They'd heard. One of them, Oren, the gruff old chief with oil-stained fingers, approached. She's got cracked supports, fried avionics, and half her flaps are hanging by prayers, he said. I nodded. She held out longer than she should have. She held because you flew her right. He paused, then handed me a small can of paint. The nose art could use a touch-up, he said. I turned the can in my hand. Same dull gray we used for repairs. I crouched near the shark teeth, worn and flaked from heat and sand, and began repainting each jagged edge, slow and precise. She doesn't need to look pretty, I muttered. Just needs to remind them what she is. Oren crossed his arms. They're already calling her something else. The hangar boys, the fuel runners, even the rookies. I looked up. What? They're calling her Ghost Fong. I let that settle. Not because it sounded cool, but because it sounded earned. The rest of the day passed in silence. I helped strip scorched panels, rewired what I could, and walked each mechanic through what happened in the air. No stories. Just data. Just facts. But still, word spread. That night, the mess hall was different. Pilots stopped me mid-step, offering nods, handshakes, even quiet salutes. No one said "Dust Fox" like it was a joke anymore. And one by one, the same people who once smirked when I walked into briefings now paused when I passed. Not because I asked them to. Because the sky had spoken. And it didn't whisper. Weeks passed. My bird, Ghost Fong, still sat in Hangar 4, half-gutted but no longer alone. Every day, crews swarmed her with reverence. Pilots stopped by just to touch her fuselage. Even command sent a photographer once, not for the press, but for the records. As for me, I wasn't reassigned. Not grounded. Not reprimanded. Just watched. Command wasn't sure what to do with someone who broke their rules but saved their men. So they studied me like a fire they hadn't started but now had to live with. One morning, Colonel Herrick called me in. His desk was clean. His voice unreadable. You're being offered choice of reassignment, he said. Training division. Fleet upgrade consultant. Or, I raised a brow. Or, he continued, you keep flying. Not cargo. Not recon. Combat lead. Full autonomy. That caught me off guard. You're serious? You proved you don't need a wingman, he said, then paused. But the next generation does. I left without answering. I walked the tarmac alone, feeling the grit under my boots, the wind against my scars. That evening, a new pilot approached me. Kid couldn't have been more than 23. Still fresh, still full of questions. Ma'am, he said, when they said you took on 5 enemy jets alone, why didn't you retreat? I looked at him for a long moment. Not unkind, just quiet. Because retreat isn't instinct, I said. Protection is. He didn't understand. Not fully, but someday he would. By the end of the week, Ghost Fong was flight ready. Not pristine, not new, but strong, reliable, like the name on her nose. The next mission I flew wasn't a legend. It was routine. But when I touched down, a fresh recruit whispered, "That's her. Dust Fox." And someone corrected him, gently. "No, that's the one who flew the steel sky home." Later that night, I stood alone beside the runway. Looking up, the stars were out, bright and unafraid. The desert wind whispered across the hangars. And in that silence, the sky remembered. It remembered the roar, the storm, the strike, and it remembered the woman who never asked for glory, only for enough sky to fly.